Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker show. This is your roundup of all things maker and embedded and lovely. On this week's show we'll be looking at some news in the form of Arduino shifting their back end from EmbedOS, which is now depreciated, to Zephyr, and what that means. Spoiler alert, not much. Arduino IDE will be the same. CapibaraZero, which is an open source alternative to the Flipper Zero, and we'll be talking about what that is and why it's important. But the big news of the week is that the Nordic Semiconductor have now finally released the Thingy 91X. Now, the Thingy 91, which I have here, was their all-in-one Bluetooth Low Energy and cellular IoT kit with a bunch of sensors in it. It has a battery and a battery management system in it. The 91X takes what this is and upgrades it in almost every way. You have the same host MCU, the NRF5340, but yeah, we'll get into the changes in this week's show. Speaking of which, let's get on with it. We're going to start this week's show talking about the CapibaraZero, which is one of several open source and cheaper implementations of the much beloved Flipper Zero. Now, the Flipper Zero was a pocket slash handheld device, which on the surface looked a little bit like a Tamagotchi. It has an adorable dolphin that is very curious and likes to play, and it has buttons on it. But the thing itself has a very advanced RFID and NFC reader. It can talk in various communications protocols and has a sub-gigahertz transceiver as well on it. The idea being that you can use this as a penetration testing tool or general curiosity tool about all forms of communication. Does that mean that you can spoof NFC cards and spoof your garage door opening mechanism, for example? Absolutely it does. And the CapibaraZero is supposed to be an alternative that for folks that don't want to spend the $160 for a Flipper Zero can get much the same using a much cheaper development kit with custom firmware. So we'll be using the always fantastic CNX software as our reference point to talk about the CapibaraZero. Because there's two things to talk about here. Because CapibaraZero is actually just a build. It's just firmware designed to work with the ESP32. Now, this is the LilyGo T Embed CC1101 that Capibara are focusing on because it happens to have all of the hardware that you would need to do something very similar to the Flipper Zero. And that hardware is an ESP32 S3 module with a micro SD card slot, a small display, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth from the ESP32, a low-power sub-gigahertz RF transceiver, an NFC RFID, I2C transceiver, and a couple of other things, audio and a battery with a battery management system. So what can you do with something like this? Well, the whole point is it's for working with and detecting and hacking and learning about radio waves or near-field communication. If you have messed around with any of these things, you'll have probably come across some interesting things that you can do with them. And you can do good or bad things with them. The whole point is the Flipper Zero is such a beloved pen testers tool because it allows them to very quickly check if there are vulnerabilities in a wireless network at all. And for most pen testers, they're doing that so that they can say, hey, there's a vulnerability here. People make their living doing that. But the CapibaraZero isn't just for this particular hardware. It is firmware designed to emulate what the Flipper Zero does, and you can also get it on the standard ESP32 S3 Devkit from Espressif or the Arduino Nano ESP32. But the main reason I wanted to start with this is that if you were interested in the Flipper Zero and it was much too high of a price of entry, as it says the $169 asked for the Flipper Zero, you can get for $60 this kit shipped, and then the firmware is of course free and open source. But the Flipper Zero itself is something I find kind of fascinating because I don't have one. I really wanted one when they first appeared on the scene, but I couldn't really justify getting one, which sounds weird for me, the person who obsessively collects a bunch of different development boards and things. But the furore and the potential banning in Canada of this device that followed it really interested me because right off the top, my views on this are very simple. You can't ban something like this because it makes no sense to ban it, right? This thing absolutely could be used for illegal purposes. It was alleged that it was used to try and steal cars, but I think if someone was using a Flipper Zero to actually hack car signals and unlock cars, either those cars were compromised anyway, or someone's using this device way beyond its usual use case. But what this is a development kit. It's got a microcontroller in there. It's got a few different communication protocols in there. So let's just say, okay, you can't have this inside this kind of a package. Ban the Flipper Zero and ban any devices that have a battery and a sub-gigahertz module and RFID, all of these things together. So then, okay, Are you going to ban someone that has an ESP32 development board and happens to have all of these modules in their house? What happens if you find someone with a rucksack with a whole variety of different electronic modules in it, all with Stemmer, QT, or Grove attachments that they can just go click, 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 and suddenly they have a FlipperZero, and then click, 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 it's gone again. There's no way that you can enforce this. And the idea always gets trotted out that this thing is too dangerous and can't be used. Most things that are too dangerous and can't be used cannot be stopped that easily, because unlike specifically weapons, which are designed to do damage, almost everything that's put into this is designed to do such a wide variety of things that you cannot clamp down on it. What you can do, however, is educate people, especially companies and people who are making devices that are going to be consumer focused, that they should make them as secure as they do their actual industrial and secure stuff. Anyway, that was a bit of an Ian rant. I apologize for that so early in the show. This development board by itself is really interesting and cool, and the fact that Capybara is targeting it is something that I think a lot of you will find interesting. I will leave a link to this in the description, and of course a link to the original FlipperZero page if you would like to read what the OG thing did, essentially, and still does. Now, earlier this year, Arduino announced that they would be moving to Zephyr OS as the back end for their Arduino core, for the code base for their boards. And this is partially because Mbed is going to be end of life. In 2026, Mbed OS and the Mbed platform will be no more. But moving to Zephyr also had a number of advantages. So we can get into that in just a moment. But for those of you that really just want to jump right in and see where the beta is up to at this point, you can head to the link, which is somewhere down just under here, I believe. Oh, there's a link to the repository just there. There's also a link directly to the Getting Started guide. How to get started, head over to our repository. And this will give you all of the instructions you need to get going. And essentially, it's going to be not dissimilar to things you've done before. You add it to the additional boards manager, but now it's the package Zephyr. The only other thing that's different is that you will need to burn the bootloader on your board. So you just put it into bootloader mode and then click burn bootloader in the IDE, and then you are getting started. However, this is a beta for the Zephyr OS. Don't expect everything to be there and in place. As far as I understand at this point, the boards that are supported are the Nano BLE33, the Portenta boards, the Giga boards, maybe some of the boards based on the Renesas chip, but don't quote me on that. I haven't actually looked in the boards text here on the GitHub page yet. This is something that I haven't had a chance to do myself. But here's something that I think a lot of people will be very excited about. Yes, dynamic sketch loading, good. Yes, the Zephyr subsystems, diving into those is going to be a lot of fun. I've worked with actual Zephyr to an extent. It's very complicated, but it is very powerful, and I'm not good enough to use it, but understand it enough to realize its power. The words of a non-engineer. Here's the thing I think a lot of people really love: fast compiling. Since only a thin layer of user code and libraries are compiled, while the rest of Zephyr OS is already binary, compilation is faster and the resulting binary files are smaller. This is going to be something that I think a lot of people are going to like. The iteration time and the time it took to compile and upload Arduino sketches can be agonizingly slow. And yeah, this will be a lot faster, because with Zephyr, if you don't need to do a completely pristine build and build everything up from scratch once again, it is blazingly fast, because a lot of the stuff is at project setup, set up behind the scenes. And it's only when you add or remove big things like modules, like dependencies, that you actually have any change in that. So, if you want to get started with it, you can follow the link on this blog page, which is the one that I will be linking just now. Just a quick reminder, as I did in last week's show and the show before it, if you hear any rustling in the background, that is not a problem with my microphone. That is the hedgehog. I really do love having a hedgehog in my studio. It's such a nice feeling. It's like having a studio pet, but it's a wild animal. But he's got his own thing over there. He's under a big pile of leaves, and he's chill, I think. Now, I think one of the more anticipated things from Nordic Semiconductor has been the Nordic Thingy 91X. Now, the original Nordic Thingy 91, I have one here, was a really fun little device. This basically combined Nordic's, at the time, flagship system and package for cellular IoT. It also had an NRF5340 on board for just as a host controller, and it has, NFC aerial here, a bunch of different sensors on board, and a battery and battery management system. It's just a completely full and intact system for doing any kind of prototyping with cellular IoT. In fact, if I remember correctly, back in the day, Nordic had a demo where they stuck one of these under the pizza box on the back of a bike, and they made their own fake pizza box service so that you could see exactly where it was on the map as it came to you, and the inside sensors could see if it had been moved backwards and forwards or dropped. And I think even the temperature and humidity sensor detected how hot the pizza was. That was just some kind of real world out there in the field potential use for something like this. Anyway, the new version, the Thingy 91X, is a big upgrade in pretty much every respect. So the Thingy 91X is closer in form factor to the Thingy 53, which is Nordic's Bluetooth Low Energy Edge AI prototyping kit, in that it's the same kind of plastic molded case now, rather than this rubber case. This rubber case is kind of nice, but it is very annoying because you have to sort of force the development board in and out whenever you want to do anything with it. These cases are different in that you can open the sides to actually access the ports you need to, and then close it again when you don't need them, but you can pop the entire thing out when you do actually want to work on anything on the inside. It's a little bit more practical, and if you've worked with the Nordic Thingy 53, this kind of casing will be very familiar to you. And I'm mentioning that because from the outside and from the basic way that you use it, that really is the biggest change, but inside is a bigger upgrade in every single respect. So, the original Nordic Thingy 91 used the NRF 9160 system and package, which at the time was their flagship cellular IoT device that allowed you to speak to the cloud wherever you were. Now, it's been upgraded to the NRF 9151, which has all of the benefits the original one did, but as it mentions here, alongside the Power Class 3 23 decibels per milliwatt amplifier they also have Power Class 5 20 decibels per milliwatt. Global connectivity and power efficiency. The integrated modem enables global connectivity. New unique modem features for further power saving and ease of use. It's not something I've got into yet, but DECT NR Plus I think is one of the main draws that if you know what it is and use it in the industry already, you'll be very glad to see that this is now available with this. Well, not with this is the old one, but and if you don't know what it is, you probably don't have to worry about it. But I always think of DECT NR Plus as the IoT for industry that I don't have to worry about unless I actually get a job in the industry. Anyway, so the star of the show, as it were, was the cellular IoT system and package on this Thingy 93. This still has the NRF 5340 running the show, which is still functionally Nordic's flagship Bluetooth Low Energy microcontroller. Sure, the NRF 54H is going to supersede it because it's more powerful while using less power from power draw. It's an incredible thing, but it's still early days for that. The 5340 is still functionally the flagship, and that's what you're getting in this as well, running the show. But this is where things start to differ. The old ones, they were Bluetooth Low Energy if you ran them that way, mostly just cellular IoT, but this also has the NRF 7002 IC in it, giving you Wi-Fi 6 connectivity. Now, Wi-Fi was never really an option for this kind of device in the past because it was so power hungry, your battery would be dead in a minute. Wi-Fi 6 changed that and allowed it to run at such a low ebb that you can use it for the same kind of locationing as you would in other ways. So when you're outside, you could get GPS, but when you're inside, Wi-Fi locationing allows it to talk very quietly to routers and anonymously to get location data and nothing else, which allows you to have a tracker that works outdoors and indoors, something that you previously would have difficulty doing. But so far, I'm just listing things that Nordic chips can do, and I'm sure that isn't all that interesting to some of you, because you could just get a development kit if you wanted that. But what makes this a proper prototyping kit is this stuff just down underneath me here. It comes with a rechargeable LiPo battery, and also a 6-axis IMU with a gyroscope, a magnetometer with a 3-axis accelerometer, and environmental sensors for temperature, humidity, air quality, and air pressure. Not only that, the board itself comes with some of the other things we've talked to Nordic about at trade shows. For example, the NPM 1300P MIC for battery charging and fuel gauging, yeah, I've already talked about the NRF 5340. It comes bundled with SIM cards for a couple of different kind of network types, I suppose is the best way to put it, depending on where you are in the world. And also, I don't see it on this page, but I do know that there's also an extra little plug-in at the bottom, which you can plug into the Thingy 91 to allow you to plug it into other power profiling hardware tools like Nordic's Power Profiler or the NPM Fuel Gauge, so that you can actually get full control over the power usage of your device while you're prototyping it, so that you get the best out of your battery when you're on the field. On the field, in the field. On the street, in the field. So if you would like to find out more about it, I will of course be linking the product page from Nordic below this video. There's also a rather good CNX software article I read before filming this that I'll try and remember to link down there too, which gives a bit more information. You can find out how to get started with it on Nordic's site, and of course this is a Nordic thing, so it will work with the NRF Connect SDK, but it's a Nordic cloud device, so it will also work with the NRF Cloud, both of which, if you have any previous knowledge of, are very easy to get basic examples up and running with, to give you a starting point to make your own project out of. Again, if you're not an engineer like me, it can be a bit of hard going, but I say this all the time, Nordic's getting started with the NRF Connect SDK fundamentals course is one of the best starting steps into this kind of things I've ever come across, and it is so remarkably similar to getting started with Zephyr in general that it allows you to actually get used to the idea of working with the Zephyr project without having to actually dive fully in, which is always a great thing. However, at the time of recording this, I wasn't able to find a place where they're in stock. But also at the time of recording this, they're going to be with Mauser in the next 4 or 5 days, as far as I understand it. So by the time you see this, you'll probably be able to grab one of these from one of the various distributors down the side. Yeah, I don't really know much more to say about this other than this is probably the Nordic thing I've been the most excited about outside of the NRF54L15, because that is functionally the follow-on to the NRF52 series that shows up in everything, including some of my favorite development boards, including the tiny little Xiao boards and the Arduino boards, and probably half of the consumer tech that you own that uses Bluetooth Low Energy, to be fair. But yeah, the Thingy 91 is a really fun piece of kit. A lot of people had a lot of fun with the older version of this in Portland at Teardown earlier this year, where they did a scavenger hunt around the city using the GPS capabilities of this, along with the Bluetooth capabilities to talk to your phone. Yeah, there's a lot you can do with these little devices, and they are really quite fun. The one thing I have completely forgot to mention is at the time of filming, these are available for around $80, I believe. I stand corrected. I was on the UK Mauser site. It's going to be £80 on Mauser, which I believe is actually closer to around about $100 or euros. Either way, as I tend to say quite a lot on this show, whether you're talking about small creators or large companies, making something like this is not quite the same as buying a cheap development kit from a vendor site. There's a lot of tech that goes into this, and I do understand if you're used to getting things like development boards that cost you 5 to 15 euros shipped, that spending 100 euros on something like this would be wild. Well, not this. This is the older one, but you're getting an entire array of industry standard stuff inside a very small prototyping box with the tools to do pretty much anything you want to it. I myself am very excited about getting a Thingy 91X, and even if I don't manage to get one, luckily through my job, I'll definitely be buying one of them because yeah, I've had a lot of fun with this little device. It kind of taught me a lot about what I don't know more than what I do, and yeah, working out all the gaps in my knowledge, especially when it came to cellular IoT, taught me a hell of a lot. Anyway, Thingy 91X is now here. It is time for our product of the week, which is going to be the ESP32 C6 Devkit C1, which is Espressif's own dev kit for their home assistant / thread Zigbee talking to everything microcontroller. But before we do that, it is time to announce the winner of our previous competition for the nVME base for Raspberry Pi 5 from Pimironi. And the winner this time is OnRock, with the comment reading, #Pi5, I'd use the nVMe base with my Raspberry Pi 5 to build a high-speed home media server. With those incredible read and write speeds, it would be perfect for streaming movies and music seamlessly across my devices. Plus, it could double as a file storage hub for my family, which seems like the perfect use case for this. Yes, congratulations OnRock. We'll be in touch with you as to how we can get this out to you, and please do let us know how you get on with it. And when you actually set that all up, if you take a few photos of it and feel like documenting the process of setting up your own home server for Raspberry Pi 5, I'm sure the Electromaker community will be very happy to see it. And so yeah, if you head to our project hub, you can make a free account there and just document it. It doesn't have to be an absolute work of art, just roughly the steps you took, and I'm sure other folks would like to copy along with that, as I'm almost certain that SSD drives are going to become the norm for people working with Raspberry Pis, especially given what direction it looks like some of the other Pi peripherals may be going, as I talked about in last week's show with the Pi 500. But yes, congratulations once again, and now let's get on to this week's product of the week. So on to the ESP32 C6 Devkit C1, which is a long name, I get it, but this is obviously one of the iterations that were taken along the way to Espressif releasing this particular dev kit for their chip. This is the official dev kit for the ESP32 C6, and it features the ESP32 C6 Room 1U module. Now, you don't need to know much about this other than this is a module that has the chip on it. It has a built-in in Arial. It says it can have up to 8 megabytes of flash, but the version that you are getting is the one with 8 megabytes of SPI flash memory. Now, beyond that, I will let Robin take you through all of the details of it. I feel that ESP32s are things that most of the people watching the show will have some previous knowledge of. The big difference here being that the C6 is specifically designed by Espressif to be its go-to wireless home assistant and home automation device. Yes, it's Wi-Fi and Bluetooth enabled, but it also works with Zigbee, it also works with Thread. It is interestingly also a very fast single-core RISC-V chip as well. So you only have one core to work with, but I think it goes up to 160 megahertz or something along those lines. And in fact, let's just check that on the datasheet, which I have right now. Oh, the memory is on point today. 160 megahertz embedded 32-bit RISC-V single-core processor with 320 kilobytes of ROM, 512 kilobytes of HPS RAM, and 16 kilobytes of LPS RAM. So, yeah, I managed to remember that somehow. And as previously mentioned, it also has Wi-Fi, 2.4 gigahertz band, and Bluetooth at 5.3, Bluetooth LE and Mesh, and as previously mentioned, Zigbee and Thread. So, of course, another important factor here is price. These things cost only $9. Now, there was a time when being able to get any ESP32 type of development board for around this price, it was absurd, and you had to really shop in the far-flung edges of AliExpress to find them this cheap. But this is a direct from Espressif development kit, admittedly being sold via our shop, for just $9. And the project I talked about just last week, where if you had 2 Thread-enabled boards, and then one further board to talk to the Wi-Fi, you have a Thread router with the dual boards here and a Thread device with the board just over here. So a big chunk of that is $18 for a full Thread setup to get started working with your own devices, as long as you have one other board to take care of Wi-Fi to talk to the rest of the network. Because that's how most edge Thread routers work, right? They talk to Wi-Fi and various other things, and then they are the ones that actually coordinate the Thread mesh. But beyond that, the Thread mesh can exist completely by itself. So a couple of these boards and you have a Thread endpoint and a Matter controller, or a Thread controller if you decide to work with Matter, if that makes sense, and you could get started with it. Now, I've talked more already than I want to. Please do go and watch Robin's fantastic video on this as always. But this is a product of the week, so of course we are running a giveaway, and this is how you enter it. Yes, as always, it's nice and simple. If you want to win one of these, leave a comment on this video, the product of the week video, which will be linked in the description of the video here, with the hashtag ESP32. You need to tell us what you would do if you won it, and if you want to just cheat, you can say what Ian said. Yeah, I'd make a Thread border router and then a Thread device, but I'd like some slightly more actual interesting use case ideas. Are you going to incorporate this into your smart home? Are you going to make it the basis of a completely DIY smart home or something completely different? Do let me know. But leave the hashtag, because no matter how good your idea is, we do pick the prize winners at random to make it fair, and we will be announcing the prize winner on the 8th of January 2025 most likely, just given the fact that there'll be a little bit of traveling around going on my part then. But yes, do have fun with this one, enjoy the winter period and come up with some nice ideas, and do let me know in the comments of this video, and I look forward to announcing the winner. Up next, Pipo! Pipo! Oh, I did point the right way. I thought I pointed Pipo. Pipo. Sorry, we have a kid's book called Pipo, and so whenever I see Pipo, I just think Pipo. But Pipo is a family of sensors for creative interactivity with music, video, graphics, and more. It is a pre-launch project on Crowd Supply, and one that I am particularly fond of because it does something I like a lot. It takes what is essentially a few relatively simple modules, the distance and motion sensing modules. We have modules like this that attach to our microcontrollers, but it uses them in a way that inspires creativity and doesn't necessarily require someone who is really deep into the weeds to plumb together their own answer to a question of, could I control this game by moving my hand up and down, or could I control this music by turning this thing around? Pipo just allows you to do it by being plug and play. So, 3 modules aimed at enabling dynamic live interaction with audiovisual and music software. They turn sensors into standard input devices in seconds. They support MIDI, OSC, and USB HID protocols, ensuring compatibility with a wide range of computing platforms. As you can see, it has a very nice in-browser way of configuring things. Again, great for people who aren't necessarily deep into into their coding journeys yet, but want to start messing around with different kinds of hardware as input. And you can see here, by holding one of the Pipos here in a 3D printed case, you can use the accelerometer, magnetometer, and gyro to move around this stuff on a screen. And this could be a processing sketch, it could be various things. This one particularly pleases me. It's using the distance sensors to play Pong. And then there is the analog board, which basically allows you to plug in whatever you want. As you can see here, there's a couple of switches and a analog input, which is a distance sensor here, allowing you to have a HID keyboard sending keyboard strokes up and down, and then MIDI signals going up and down as well. So you could quite conceivably imagine those up and down things moving up and down in a rack in Ableton, for example, and the distance sensor being some kind of grouped or master channel filter effect or something along those lines, I can imagine, or maybe a delay send. You can see yourself doing some quite fun little almost theremin style effects, but adding whatever different sounds you want with just a little bit of hardware input. Now, so far, so cool, but you may have noticed that, of course, you could just get any development board that has an IMU on it and plug it in and do a little bit of your own plumbing. What makes this particularly special is that you may have noticed from this demo here and the analog demo, there are no wires going to your host device. This thing works completely wirelessly. This is thanks to the fact that it has a BMS and a battery management unit inside it, and it runs the ESP32 S3 mini module as its microcontroller, which allows it to do quite a lot on the back end, but also communication, and so pretty much everything you need to do happens wirelessly over the air. Now, I'm sure there are options for plugging in as actual hardware, and there's going to be various ways of working with it, but I did want to mention that because these things are really nice little boxes and essentially could just be standalone devices that you could use as a consumer. You can plug this thing in, charge it up, and then attach whatever you want to it, or put one into the hand of your kid. That's what I want to do. I want to set all the measurement stuff in the inertial measurement unit to a variety of crazy different MIDI sends to Ableton, have some nice music playing, and then give it to my 3-year-old and say, just go crazy, and then just see what he does with a bunch of different delays and distortions and filters. And yeah, he can dance around and make his own music completely wirelessly. It's the kind of thing that really appeals to someone like me, who is technically minded in one sense, but really just a musician, artist, bum who got into this stuff out of interest at heart. Anywho, if you've been following us for a while, you know what the drill is. When we cover pre-launch projects, we don't know what the price is going to be, we don't know when it's going to be launching, but you can find out more information by entering your email address here to subscribe to this specific crowd supply project, and then the creator of Pipo can get in touch with you when the project goes live, and you can come to choose and whether you want to support it and help fund the project or not. This seems from the pre-launch page to be a really well thought out project, not something that's been thrown together to make a bit of quick cash, but something that is clearly loved and thought about deeply. And yeah, I'm really excited to see where this goes. This is the kind of thing that has enough effort put into it at the early stage to really grow a community around it, and I really hope it does, because it's a really good thing. But I will leave it at that for now. Any more information you need to find, you can find in the description of this video, and please do let me know what you think and if you plan to get your hands on any of the Pipo family of modules when they go live. That has been our show for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for your continued support. Thank you to everyone who has been shopping in the Electromaker store for your Christmas goods. That helps us out immeasurably. We have had a few sponsors over previous weeks, as you know. But yeah, this is still pretty much something that we're trying to do more or less ourselves, and we don't put any adverts on our YouTube videos other than the one you saw in the video last week when I chatted about it. I hope you have a wonderful season of celebration, regardless of what that means to you, who you're doing it with, what you do. I hope you have time to rest and eat some nice food. It's been an absolute pleasure to spend another year. It's been another year of just wonderful waffling in the attic of dreams in my kind of unprofessional, non-engineering way about this stuff, and I feel very privileged to have such a great number of people returning to watch the show each week. So thank you, each and every one. I hope you have a fantastic time. I may put out another show this year, and so I'll have to say all this again, but if not, I will see you in 2025. Have a fun, safe and creative time until then.